The Catholics of Oz is brought to you by the Star Quest Production Network and is made possible by our many generous patrons. If you'd like to support the podcast, please visit sqpn.com/give.
You're listening to episode 5 of Catholics of Oz. Catholics of Oz is a show where we discuss faith, culture, and what's been happening from an Aussie perspective. Whether it's synods or science, apostolates and apps, providence or productivity, you can hear it right now on the Catholics of Oz. Hello, it's Lindsay Sant here. Welcome to episode 5 of Catholics of Oz. And joining me today is Caroline. Caroline, how are you?
Well, thank you, Lindsay. How are you?
I'm going pretty well, thanks. And Caroline, today we don't have Jared joining us because he's a bit unwell.
Yeah, poor thing. Not very good.
Yeah, no. But anyway, at least he'll get to listen to this for the first time instead of that'd be a bit of a surprise for him. Yeah.
Yes.
So
yeah,
Jared, whenever he hears, actually Jared will be better. So there's no point wishing him well because he'll be better when he hears this.
Yes. Hopefully he will be better very soon as well.
Yeah. So before we continue today's show, to our listening audience, remember to like Catholics of Oz on the SQPN Facebook page, retweet our episodes on Twitter, leave us comments, subscribe on iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, TuneIn, or wherever your favorite podcast app might be. And remember that we're also on YouTube, so you can hit the bell to get notifications when a new episode comes out. Don't forget also to leave us feedback on your podcast players if they have it, because this helps the podcast directories to share our show with others and give us a bit more notice. So you can help our community to grow and we can reach more listeners. So Caroline, let's get started and let's begin with Faith Beyond Borders.
Well, I'm actually feeling rather good about this. I think we've all arrived at a very special place, eh? Oh. Spiritually, ecumenically.
How do you make somebody love you without affecting free will?
Welcome to my world, son. If you come up with an answer to that one, you let me know.
Yes, I had to work very hard to pass Latin and theology.
Oh, quite. Those are, of course, the most important things.
Oh, yeah.
So, Caroline, for today's Faith Beyond Borders, this is a bit different to the way we do this segment. Normally we talk about how someone has gone beyond the borders of the church in some kind of way and is sharing the faith boldly in some way. Today, I guess, is a segment maybe about how not to do it or how it could be done a little bit better. So you and I have had a look at this story, and it was in Business Insider, and the headline was, "A waiter was annoyed after his $20 tip turned out to be a Bible pamphlet." And what happened was a 17-year-old, Garrett Wayman, was working in a restaurant in Wichita, Kansas, and was left a tip, and he was excited because it was a $20 bill. Unfortunately, when he opened the $20 bill, it turned out to not be money at all, but it was a Bible tract, and it was basically telling this person, in fact, the text here is, "Don't be fooled, there is something you can have more valuable than money." And then it was all about finding Jesus, which in itself is a good message, I guess. However, this poor person missed out on their tip, and in fact, they were quite upset that they went to Twitter to talk about it, and he said, "I just want this person to know that I only make $3 an hour." And then this story got retweeted over 2,000 times at the time of the story coming out. So that's a bit of a negative in terms of spreading the Christian message in some kind of way. So before we talk about the story, I'm not entirely familiar with the tipping system, and I know that we have a lot of American listeners, and for them it's an everyday thing. In fact, the only time I've ever left a tip was in Paris in 2016 when we went to a Hard Rock Cafe there, and we noticed that they were tipping waiters there, and so we tipped the waiter. And in fact, the waiter was actually really good to us too, so we felt good about leaving a tip for him. Have you encountered tipping at all?
Oh, yeah. I was very lucky to go to LA on my way to Peru to see our Uncle Alex back in 2005. And he knows the United States very well because he's there quite often as part of his mission. And so I went on a trip with him to LA, and he introduced me and showed me what to do. So basically, have a meal and you leave it a bit of money for the waiter. I think it's there to supplement their wage because they actually don't get paid very well. So that makes up part of their income. So yeah, it's very polite and customary to leave a tip. Whereas here in Australia, I guess it's kind of, you can give a tip if you feel like it, or if somebody's gone above and beyond, the service that they normally provide.
Yeah, I think with us, it's normally you might say, "Hey, keep the change," something like that, just as a thank you, and if there's a little bit left over or something. Yeah. So, what about this story? I mean, this person was sharing the message of Jesus. I mean, that's a good thing, right? So,
yes.
What do you think?
I have to say, I was kind of annoyed. I was kind of annoyed for the guy. Like, he thought he'd, struck it rich. Well, not rich, but he had a bit of extra money that day, and it turned out just to be a pamphlet. I mean, I guess the person leaving it was, it left it with good intention, but I think at that time the poor guy's struggling for money, and it would have been great if it was actually a $20 note for him, poor thing. So,
and $20 is actually, when we think about it, it's more money here because $20 is worth more in Australian currency as well, isn't it? So it actually, it's a significant amount of money that this person missed out on. So that disappointment must have been quite strong. So the tract itself, Caroline, it says the following, all right? It says, things and people will disappoint you, which first of all must have been made it worse, not better.
He ticked the box there.
He's done really well with that, yeah. Nothing in this world will really satisfy. That is because there is a void in your life that can only be filled by God who created you. How would you like to start all over again with a clean slate, a clean conscience, without guilt or remorse? You can, God's word in the Bible tells us how. And then it talks about how Jesus died for this person. And it says, you've tried everything else, but now you need to try faith through Jesus Christ. It says through spelt THRU. I guess it's kind of trendy. I don't know. It's supposed to be.
Yeah.
And basically...
all the other words are spelt fully, though. I don't know why he just abbreviated through.
So,
anyway.
Because you're so angry by the time you get to that point, you need something to bring you back down again. Yeah, something cool.
That's it.
Yeah, so look, my little take on this... actually, I've got 2 points to make, and you can respond to this as well later on. But yeah, I think it's good to want to go and evangelize beyond the borders, right? This is kind of the way we talk about it, faith beyond borders. And I give this person who left the pamphlet behind a tick for boldness, but not 100%, So the boldness is not completely there, maybe in a way it could be. Because if it was real boldness, I think evangelization needs face-to-face contact. So I might have, if I had felt brave enough, I think I would have slipped this person a $20 note in their hand and said, "God bless you, thank you for the meal." I reckon that might have been better than the promise of $20 that didn't eventuate. So it's not exactly a positive way to spread the message of Jesus, I guess. The other thing is the theology is a little bit poor in the pamphlet itself, because essentially the formula is, give away things of the world, forget, they're going to disappoint you. Turn to Jesus, say this prayer, and there's a prayer at the bottom, and read your Bible, and God will free you from all of your sins, and you're good to go. Better life starts now. Except the forgiveness of sins doesn't exactly work that way entirely. There's a lot more to go through than simply making a personal commitment. There's, for example, becoming part of God's community, God's church, and things like that. This probably wasn't a Catholic tract. However, we talk about baptism, for example, wiping away a person's sins, the importance of reconciliation, the idea of that when you go to confession, you are making yourself right with your community and making yourself right with God at the same time. So it kind of sounds like a bit of a cheat to be able to say, all right, I've read the pamphlet, I've said the prayer, I'm reading my Bible, now nothing else matters. I don't need to make up for anything that I've done. If I've offended someone or hurt someone close to me, I don't need to worry about it because God's already forgiven me for that, so I don't have to act on it anymore. What do you think?
Yeah, I would have to agree with you. Like you said, if the guy had gone up to him, slipped a 20 in his hand and said, God bless you, I think that would have made a better impact and a more positive impact on him, and perhaps may have made him think, again, think twice about what, the example the man is showing him and the kindness that he's showing him, and perhaps would have felt like maybe he could pass on some kindness to someone else as well. Instead, he was upset and he got a negative attitude towards this, quote unquote Christian person who tricked him basically by leaving a pamphlet that looked like a $20 note. May not be the best way to do it. I think, like evangelizing by example is a much better way. Just showing someone some kindness is a much nicer and better way than, just maybe trying to trick them into going to a church and talking to people that way. So yeah, I would definitely agree with you.
Yeah, it does read like
in that manner.
It reads like a bit of a prank, doesn't it? In a way, it's like, ha, fooled you. You thought you were going to get $20, but you got Jesus. It doesn't. It doesn't make sense, does it?
Yeah, it's like it doesn't make him want Jesus. I mean, it's like, oh, if this is what it is, I'm not going to go.
Yeah, it has the unfortunate effect of maybe hardening someone's heart against Jesus.
Exactly.
If this is what Christians are like, I wonder what Christ is like then. That kind of perception that you hear.
Exactly.
Yeah, and this seems like a phenomena that's happening in some places because the article talks about other people that have encountered this as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it does.
Yeah, so I actually like the idea, and I've been in situations before where I've given people money or I've helped people out. And then the kicker at the end is I say, God bless you or God bless. And they look at you funny for a while, but then at least they know where that kindness has come from, what the basis for that kindness is, rather than the anonymous prank, which is kind of what this is.
Goodness me.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
I agree.
And the thing is, there were people who were not Christian who actually did better than these Christian people that leave these things behind. Because in the story, it says that some people were sympathetic to Wayman and said to him, "Send me your personal message, and I'll send you the $20. I'll do that for you." So people actually reached out to try and give this person that money as well that they didn't get.
Exactly. So maybe he makes some more money out of it than in the end.
Yeah. Then he might say, well, but Christians, he might have made more money, but the perception is, well, Christians are no good, but everyone else is all right.
Exactly. It's probably not the message that the guy intended to leave in the first place.
Yeah. So it's good to evangelize. It's good to be bold and to have a bit of courage, but I guess we have to think our evangelization through to the end, don't we? The kind of message we're actually sending. If we are, as St. Paul says, ambassadors for Christ, then we've got to represent Christ and not accidentally, give Christ this reputation that he doesn't deserve.
Yeah, I didn't see him pranking anyone in the Bible, so maybe let's not do that.
I've not seen that either. Yeah. So in fact, let's move on to the next part of our Faith Beyond Borders segment. Thinking of teaching people how to do good things in the name of Christ. We were thinking about Lent because when this episode comes out, it will be around the beginning of Lent. And we were talking before this podcast about how we can help our kids to do Lent well. So, we obviously have ways that we do Lent in order to prepare our hearts for Easter and to fully engage ourselves in the Good Friday, Easter Saturday, Easter Sunday, all of those rituals that come with that and what it means to us. It's the center of our faith at that time of the year. But what about our kids? Because let's be honest, there's a lot of liturgy to get through. We're talking about 3 days of liturgy, just about. Starting with what is it? I was going to say Good Thursday. Starting with
Thursday,
starting with the Mass of the Last Supper and the washing of the feet. So 3 days worth of liturgy, and that's a lot for a young child to take in. So before we get to that point, so that isn't the only thing that kids experience at Easter, it's probably really important for us to do something at Lent. So you and I had a look at this article called How to Lent with Kids, and we'll put the link from Catholic Exchange in our show notes. So do you want to tell me a couple of things that you took away, a bit of wisdom that you grabbed out of this article, Caroline?
Well, I thought this was a really great article on showing you and giving you some tips on how to get the kids to participate in Lent and think about Lent, and introduce them to it. This lady who wrote the article suggested to use a calendar. So this calendar every day would have a task to perform or something that you can do for other people, or something that you can do that is just like a little bit of like a small suffering, to do without something. So, for example, on one of the days, no TV screens today, except for homework. So on that day, your child does not use a TV screen or an iPad, except for if they need to use it for school. There's another one, only water to drink today, so no vanilla thick shakes like my children love. Just water. Yep. Draw a picture for someone and mail it, to perform an act of kindness for somebody. Just to get them really thinking of how they can participate in Lent and why we have Lent and what we can do. Just little things, but it gets them participating and learning about how to do Lent, I guess. And it's so good for us parents because it's very easy. We just look at the calendar and say, okay, today we're doing this. Okay, kids, come on, this is what we're going to do today. So that's what I took from that, but that is a great way to...
I like this calendar.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah. No, it's all right. Just some verbal stoushing.
Yes.
But what I like about it is is that when you read it on the face of it, right? It says here, do nice things for people. That's essentially it says pray and don't do nice things for people. That's essentially the theme of it, right? But when you go deeper, it leads you into a conversation about sacrifice with your kids as well. So, for example, eat very simple meals for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Now, I know that for children that can be really, really hard because
it's hard for me.
It's hard for adults, yeah. But eating food that's not as awesome as they're used to at particular times, or missing out on a snack, or missing out on a treat at some particular time. It's then a chance to talk about sacrifice, and not just sacrifice for its own sake, but the idea of preparing our hearts for Jesus, because that's what sacrifice essentially does. If we think about the life of Jesus, and especially Jesus in his last moments on the cross, but there's a lot of sacrifice throughout his story, and when we're sacrificing, we're turning our persons into the person of Jesus in very, very small kinds of ways. And what we're essentially doing is becoming more Christ-like. And I think that's a great thing to teach our kids, so that when they are, 25, they don't accidentally leave a Bible tract for someone without leaving some money to help their needs as well. Yeah.
You do it the right way.
And it's good because it says on the calendar here, these activities are based around the 3 traditional pillars of Lent: prayer, fasting, and almsgiving, which is like service. And what it does is it even identifies in the calendar which action is which pillar. So, for example, it's got Ash Wednesday, it's got P, say a prayer about hope. Okay, so this day is a day to say a prayer. Whereas the F is fasting, and it's got no TV or screens except for homework. So it actually identifies for the child what they're doing. Today I'm doing prayer, today I'm doing fasting, today I'm doing service. I think that's a fantastic thing to do as well. I reckon the prayer should probably be every day. I mean, as parents, we pray with our kids before we take them to bed every day anyway. But yeah, these specially themed Lenten prayers are also a really, really good idea as well. Is there anything else in the article that stood out to you, Caroline?
Well, I just think that because, my eldest son, Frankie, has just turned 7, I just thought, for me personally, I have actually been thinking, how are we going to do Lent this year? How am I going to introduce him into it in a way that's simple and not too difficult so he doesn't lose interest, And, so I just took that, if we can simplify things for kids, not bombard them with, this is Lent and this is why we do Lent, and now today you have to suffer. It's like you can't eat meat, you can't eat chocolate, you can't do this, you can't do that. It's like kids can't. It's not very attractive to children. So I just think that it's a really well thought out plan, and like you said, incorporating the pillars as well. So you get a holistic way of going about Lent, and, really appealing for the children, making them want to participate with you, And, so you can do it together as a family as well, which is really great. You can participate, do your normal, what you'd normally do for Lent, but also you can participate with the kids in a very simple way.
Yeah, and there is I forget what it is, but I know that there's an age limit for when children would actually begin to do the real fasting. So the no meat on Ash Wednesday, the no meat on Fridays, the doing little sacrifices or choosing sacrifices for Lent. And I'm going to guess that was about 10 to 12 years old, but I'm happy to be corrected on that. And I'm sure there is a proper answer somewhere. In fact, I think in different countries it's different depending on what the bishops' conferences of each country decide. Although, yeah, someone who's listening can look that up and tell me. Go open a rule book and find out for me. Yeah, but it's I think regardless of what we do with our kids, it's good. I think the message to say that you're becoming more Christ-like. You're preparing your heart for Jesus in your way of doing this. And I appreciate Lent as a way to do that. The reading of Ash Wednesday, usually from memory, the gospel is about not showing off when you're sacrificing. So Jesus essentially says, in a way, act normal. Says, like, for example, put oil in your hair so that you look like you're normal. Don't be like hypocrites going, oh, I'm sacrificing when it's really hard, all that kind of stuff that I might have done when I was a child. But it's
why can't I eat chocolate?
Well, it's not fair. Yes, but it's good in a way because it's a more mature approach to say it's Lent and we have to sacrifice because that's what everyone does, but rather say we're sacrificing because we're being more Christ-like. And when we're more Christ-like, we can start being better in the world for other people around us as well. There are a lot of benefits with that, I think.
Yeah, no, you're right. Exactly.
Yeah. So why don't we move on now? And we're going to talk about science.
What a fine day for science.
You have any hobbies?
I collect spores, molds, and fungus.
Can you reverse the polarity?
I'll do my best.
Science, 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 science. Science, 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 science. Yeah, I like science.
So, Caroline, I know that you've been itching to share some science news with us today. And today we're going to start with some space science, but today we're going to move a little bit away from space science and talk about another scientific issue. But let's get some space going. Japan has landed a probe on an asteroid.
Yes, they have. So JAXA, the Japan Aerospace Exploration Agency. So last year, no, it wasn't last year, it was in 2014, they launched a probe into space. And the idea was that this probe would land on an asteroid called Ryugu. Now, this asteroid, it orbits the Earth. Sorry, not the Earth, the Sun. It orbits the Sun. And
yes, I hope not.
Well, that's another topic, but stuff does orbit the Earth that we don't know about. But anyway, that's another topic for another day. So the orbit is actually in between Earth and Mars, and it's actually termed a near-Earth object because as far as distances go in space, it's actually very close to Earth. At its closest point, it's about 95,000 kilometers, which sounds quite far away, but like I said, space is vast, so this is actually quite close when we're talking about objects being near Earth. You don't want it any closer than that. I think that's quite a nice distance for it to stay.
That's pretty good, isn't it? Yeah. So can I ask you a question about this asteroid? So from memory, it will pass by and we'll see it again at some point in the future. Is that how it works?
Yeah. So
gravity is, it's traveling in a giant circle because of gravity.
Exactly. It's kind of an elliptical orbit, so it's not completely round. So at some points in its orbit, it will be more far away from Earth than 95,000 kilometers. So it comes and goes. So I guess they would have timed the flight so that would be close enough for them to be able to land it. And so what they did it got to the asteroid last year in June. It didn't land, but I'm not sure if I don't know if it's orbiting or just it's kind of hanging around the asteroid. I have to get that detail right because I couldn't exactly find out the specifics of that. But they have done some test, not landings, but getting closer and going back up and closer and going back up and getting pictures. So we got pictures of it last year. It's like a diamond-shaped asteroid. It's quite a pretty little rock. I mean, it is a rock. It's just a grey rock, but it's quite a nice shape. Yeah, and so just a few days ago, they actually went ahead. It was on Friday. I was watching the live stream, which was really cool. It was all in Japanese, but it was they had somebody interpreting, which was really cool. So they managed to land the probe on the asteroid, and that was successful, and everybody's happy, jumping up and down and, being happy in the Japanese reserved kind of way. And then they managed to fire a bullet into the asteroid. The reason they want to fire a bullet into the asteroid is to stir up some of the dust that's on the surface and maybe a little bit that's underneath the surface. And they want to eventually start collecting the dust, the soil, just to sample the asteroid. And they want to eventually gather up 10 grams of this. And the reason is they want to kind of find out what is there. They suspect there is organic material and water. And, they want to investigate, like NASA does as well when it sends probes out, to find out more about the origin of our solar system, how it was created, and what's it's composed of. And then
so can I jump in there for a sec?
Yeah, absolutely.
Just quickly, this piece of rock, or this asteroid, I should say, I think when I read the article, and you can help me understand this better, it's basically a piece of space rock that didn't get caught up in the swirly whirly creation of planets. That's my scientific term.
Yes.
But when matter was being compressed together into planets and whatever else, this happened to miss out on becoming part of the construction of a planet. So is this just leftover material from that?
Yeah. So I mean, we're not sure exactly how the planet's formed. I mean, we're getting an idea. I mean, especially with the missions, seeing the Ultima Thule and things like that.
I'm pretty sure it was very swirly whirly though.
Yes. Yeah. Well,
yes.
They do tend to swirl and whirl a little bit around the place. But yeah, so what was the question?
Yes, but go on.
Anyway.
Yes,
it's a bit of leftover
just about what this rock is.
Basically. Yeah. So it either didn't make it into a planet, or it was part of a planet, got shot off the side of the planet as things were colliding into each other and forming, or, things like that. So there's all sorts of processes that were happening and that we're still learning about. But yeah, so basically the exciting part about this mission is that they want to get a good sample and then actually send it back to Earth. And it will actually be arriving back to Earth in South Australia, of all places, in 2020.
Hey.
Yes, and then they'll be analysing the soil for what it's composed of, and this will give us more clues, not just to the origins of our solar system, but then there's talks of, perhaps in the future mining asteroids, because, they're rich. They could be rich in metals and things that we are running out of here in Earth, and it might be a better way to preserve the Earth if we're mining, asteroids rather than our Earth. So there could be commercial applications to this as well. So yeah, that was very good. I really enjoyed that live broadcast. Just seeing how it differs from NASA. It was a much smaller room, and they were happy to tell you, they had very nice charts, and they were telling you, this is what we're doing, this is what we got up to, this is what we're doing in the future. This was our testing, and they showed us, look, these squares showed we did this test and this test and this test. It was really sweet. So I have to say I really, really enjoyed watching that. Yeah. And yeah, so
it's great where we can live in an age where NASA can show us these things live and share this information. And you know, you don't always have to go to a university to learn all this stuff. You can learn it at home from your computer or on your phone, just watching these things happen. It's fascinating.
It was great.
Let's roll on, because you wanted to also bring in something a bit more ethical. So I'll read the headline, and then, because this is going to show my ignorance now, so I'll read the headline and then I'm going to throw it over to you. So it says here, China's CRISPR twins might have had their brains inadvertently enhanced. Caroline, go.
Okay, so my other love, apart from space science, is biology, microbiology, biotechnology. I mean, that's actually what I studied at uni. So I love the very large and the very small. You know, you can't get more different than that, but, you know, they're both very interesting. So this article is talking about a researcher in China. He has gone ahead, so he claims to have genetically modified some embryos, and he's implanted 2 embryos into a woman, and in November he announced that the embryos were born. Well, you know, they were babies, and he's genetically modified them to using a technique called CRISPR and Cas9. So basically, I'll just explain that very quickly. CRISPR is
Please do.
CRISPR, which is an acronym, is a technology used when you want to splice DNA out of a DNA sequence, and it is actually a natural process that occurs in bacteria when they want to fight off viruses. So a virus will come in, and to get rid of the virus, they'll go into the DNA of the virus and just chop it up so that the virus can't function anymore, and therefore saving the cell. The Cas9 part destroys the virus itself, and that way they get rid of the whole virus in the cell. Now, so we've taken on that technology, the CRISPR technology, to edit, well, to take, we don't usually use it in people, but this time he's gone ahead and tried to cut out a gene called the CCR5 gene that naturally occurs in people, and it is a gene that helps to fight off HIV infection. Now, the gene creates a protein that allows the HIV virus to actually bind to cells in humans. So the theory is that if you cut this gene out, then you'll be immune to getting HIV. The other side of this is that tests done in mice have shown that their memory increases and that neurons are able to form again faster. The brain is able to form new connections in the brain quite quickly. So they're thinking that apart from getting this protection from HIV, it will increase the cognitive function in people. Now, it sounds great, but there's some real, not just physical implications, because once you start modifying genes, especially, I mean, in people, we just don't know enough about when you modify genes. This technique, I mean, ideally it cuts out the gene sequence that you want, but it may cut something else out. And I mean, it's targeted. It does target sequences of DNA, but it may cut other segments out. You may cut out segments that you need to be alive, or, you know, for other, who knows what function. So it's fine to be doing this kind of thing in mice, but to do it in people is very questionable. I mean, you start getting into ethical implications then. So far, I mean, they're talking about, they think one of the other scientists, I think he's from America, was talking about how he's kind of really upset that this Chinese researcher has gone and done this, because now they think that one of the babies is called a mosaic. So she's got mosaicism, which means some of the DNA she got is fine, some of the DNA is altered. So normally in a human being, you get one set of DNA. This poor child has 2 sets of DNA, and it could lead to kind of syndromes that we don't know about. unfortunately, there's not going to be any follow-up on these children because of just how the laws work. So it's fine in China to have the information of the study, but then afterwards there's no follow-up. So we don't know how these babies are going to fare. So, it's just now that, as fascinating as it is to be able to talk about altering genes in plants, in animals, I'm not sure about doing that in people. It's just too unpredictable. Already, we just don't know enough about how DNA works and what happens when you alter it. So, what do you think, Lindsay? How do you reckon, the ethics?
Yeah, so I guess I'm a lay person when it comes to the science of things, which is why I rely on you so much to talk about it. In terms of ethics, it's preventative medicine, say vaccines or something like that, for example, is a good thing. But like you said, the first real issue here, I've got a couple of ethical issues. The first one is that these kids were basically lab rats. So essentially they were experimented on, as embryos, and didn't have a say about whether this could be done to them or not when they had no life-threatening issues that needed to be prevented. So I wouldn't even class this as preventative medicine.
No, and in fact, he's induced a disease in them, which, by genetically altering them.
Yeah, the other issue I would have is that you were talking about how this was being done on mice, because mice are sort of the step before human testing and so on. But these, children as embryos were basically reduced to the status of mice, which goes way against their human dignity. From a secular understanding of human dignity, but then from a Christian, all people are made in God's image and likeness understanding as well. So I would have, I can see why, because in this article that you sent me, when you said the scientist was shocked, I can't even repeat the language that he's quoted as saying. When he saw what happened, he was really upset.
Yeah.
He said visceral repulsion and sadness. Yeah. Because we're talking about reducing people down to the level of lab experiments, which is very disturbing. Now, on the flip side of this, the good that could come out of not particularly what this scientist has done, but the good that comes out of this understanding that the CCR5 gene does particular things. It can help with preventative medicine for people who do get AIDS later on, because I think the article talked about drugs that help to suppress that gene if a person is diagnosed with AIDS. So on that side of things, it's good to know what the gene does, and then if someone is sick with AIDS or with some other illness, whatever it might be, that we might be able to create particular drugs to suppress that gene to halt the illness or even get rid of it. I guess that's a good thing, isn't it?
Yeah,
whereas genetically modifying a person before they're born, especially when there's nothing wrong with them, and especially not being entirely sure of the result, it could set a very dangerous precedent if one scientist says, well, he did it, so I'm going to try and do it myself as well.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. In fact, like you said, there's an uproar in the scientific community because this researcher has gone rogue and just broken all the rules, broken all the conventions, which say you shouldn't be doing genetic testing on embryos and even, not implanting them into humans to see what they turn out like. It's just unheard of. And everybody is very upset about it. And like you said, if one person does it, then somebody else may say, oh, let me try it now. It's one thing to do it in mice, but to do it in humans is just, I just can't even find the words.
It's scary from step one, isn't it? First he's created these embryos with the sole purpose of experimenting on them. So they're not children created out of a loving act, which is something else we talk about in the church.
And let me tell you too, to get to 2 embryos, he had actually about 30 embryos that he started out with, and he manipulated all of them, and he had to choose the ones which he thought that had this edited DNA in them and then chose them and then put them into the mother. Apparently the mother consented and she was quite happy with this. It's just, I mean, especially from a Catholic point of view, yeah, we're not valuing life at all if we're going to be doing this kind of thing. I mean, we talk about IVF when multiple embryos have to be created, and this is the same kind of thing, except a little worse because they are edited
Times
humans.
10.
Yes, so we're just getting into an area here which is very dangerous. And just as a side note, I was watching a YouTube video to say that this research has gone MIA. So don't know if we're going to be hearing from him in the near future. They were saying that he's going to be writing a peer-reviewed journal article soon on his results, but yeah, I don't know. We're going to have to find out and see about that one.
Yes, so we put it together. Geneticist in China goes missing in action after genetically engineering human beings. We're moving this topic onto Jimmy Akin's Mysterious World, and they can unpack it there.
I will hand this bit over to you, Jimmy.
Yeah, that's right. All right. So, interesting discussion. And we'd love any responses to that topic from our listeners as well. But let's move on, Caroline, and we're going to talk about some apps.
The Enterprise computer system is controlled by 3 primary main processor cores, cross-linked with redundant Mellicort's RAM stack, 14 kiloquad interface modules. The core element is based on an FTL nanoprocessor with 25 bilateral telolaterals, with 20 of those being slaved into the primary Heisentram terminal. Now, you do know what a bilateral telolateral is.
Well, of course I do.
All right, so this is a segment where we talk about apps, and what we've done today, again, like we did a couple of episodes ago, is we've got a couple of apps each that we want to talk about. One that is really good for us in some kind of way, and one that is just grossly addictive. So, Caroline, I might throw it over to you first. Why don't you tell us, first of all, which app did you pick that was useful, helpful to you in your life?
Okay, so I'm a bit of a backyard astronomer. I've got a telescope that I love to try and find the planets with, and, nebula and galaxies and, stars. And so there's an app that I use when I want to try and find out where a planet is at the moment, so I can put the telescope on it, called Starwalk 2. It's really useful. It will show you can type into the app what you're looking for, so I can type Mars, and what it will do then, it's like uses a GPS, and then you can point it up at the sky and it will have an arrow that will point in the direction where the planet is. So I could just move my phone across the sky and I'll find Mars, and that way I can point my telescope onto it and have a good look and just enjoy beautiful Mars through my telescope. That has been really valuable to me and so enjoyable to use. And then, so I use it with planets and stars and anything else that I'm trying to look at. And the second one, so what's the addictive one, is...
Yes, I think I said grossly addictive, and I think this counts, so go on.
I think so. So I love taking photos too, and anyone who has a phone, I'm sure... anything that happens, quick, get the phone out and take a photo. So, of course, that naturally leads a lot of people to Instagram. So I don't post my lunch, I don't post me brushing my teeth or anything like that, but I've actually created a couple of accounts. Okay, 3 or 4 accounts on different topics. So I've got my personal account that I might put something, my kid got this certificate today at school, or look what my cat is doing, or, here's me doing this at a place, on my Instagram, so that my family and friends that I choose to let look at it, let see the photos, can see, and, the same for them. And I like to look at their photos and I like them, put a comment, it's a bit like Facebook, but it's just pure photos. And I've got another account, which is my nature account, where I'm going out, so I might put some photos of mushrooms that I find interesting, or just beautiful scenes of nature. And I even point the camera down the telescope and I put pictures of the moon. I managed to catch a nebula once, which was really exciting. You know, you have to show that kind of thing off, you know. So Instagram is great for that. Yeah. You know, I've got one for my little publishing site that I put, you know, pictures of, oh, look, this is the book I'm working on now. And, you know, look what this word story about cats, one of them. So I put pictures of my cat, you know, and things like that. So, yeah, it's quite fun. I think Instagram's really cool. Yeah.
Actually, you turned a grossly addictive app into a really useful one, because I didn't think about the idea of making several Instagram accounts for different interests as well. That's actually a really useful tip, Caroline.
There you go.
I was about to accuse you of being a millennial, and here you go, turning it around.
I'm a smart one, yeah.
Well, yeah. So, yeah, all right. So
Don't laugh at me
my
being
app
smart.
choices
Do you hear
were
this?
sorry, no, it's just the way you said it. Sorry. But see what happens when you get siblings doing podcasts together.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So my apps, the first one is called Mark Lorenz Bodyweight Training. Now, actually, when I downloaded it a while ago, it was called You Are Your Own Gym. And the whole idea behind this app is basically if you don't want to go to a gym, you know, if the gym costs too much or anything like that, you can actually exercise using your body weight as the weight. And so what it does is it's quite ingenious, actually. You go through some different exercises. So you talk about what level you're at. So I'd be super beginner. And it tells you some exercises based on what it is that you're trying to get out of it. It's got a custom section where you can take the exercises that are there and you can put them into you can create your own little program and things like that. And what it does is it just gets you to use things around your household. So for example, it uses tables, like your own kitchen table, to do pull-ups in a very interesting kind of way. Obviously lots of push-ups, which you just need your body weight for push-ups and things like that. I was actually reading that for men anyway, there hasn't been a research done for women, but I'm guessing it would be kind of equivalent. But men who can do 40 push-ups have a significantly less risk of heart disease later on in their lives. So there you go, get up to 40. I'm sure for women it would be somewhere similar as well. And there are other exercises, like there was one where and you've got to check your doorknobs before you try this one, but there was one where you put a towel around a doorknob, you'd sort of tie it round, and then you sort of pull yourself up and down, from a push-up kind of position as well. So there's some really interesting ones in there. The only thing is, and I made the newbie mistake the first time I tried it, is actually read and know what the difference between a set is and a rep as well, because I got them mixed up. And I ended up doing lots and lots and lots of reps, and I was really sore for a couple of days. So so just got to make sure you understand how that works. But a really, well, it does help with your fitness, and I think it's really good for that. We're over here. This is a foreign concept to people who are not from this continent, but we're actually going to be heading into autumn and then winter soon. So going out to exercise gets a little bit harder to do. But also, for our friends in the other hemisphere, the weather is going to get better soon. So if you want to get outside and start doing exercise, it's really good for that too. But what I love about this app, like I said, it's just use household items and use your own body weight. You don't have to spend lots of money on buying equipment and things like that as well. So I think it's really useful just for your general fitness. And app number 2 is another game. Last time I recommended a game called Clash Royale, which is great. And there were some friends on my clan who were thrilled to get a bit of a shout out. But this app is called SteamWorld Heist. Now this one is a kind of a role-playing game, and it's in that vein of games where you build up a team and you go on little missions with that team to advance the story. But this one is different. Your team is made up of robots. So the story is that human beings are extinct and robots ventured out into space, and there are good robots and there are bad robots, and you essentially, between missions, as you save up money and save up gear, you recruit new robots to join your team, and then you have about 7 or 8 robots on your ship as you travel around to choose from, and they each have their own unique story and their own unique character type, and then depending on what the mission is, you choose robots to build up your team, and the missions go for about 5 or 10 minutes, and they're kind of side-scrolling, turn-based. So basically you take a turn, the bad guys take a turn, and you kind of have to plan ahead to know what you're going to do. And there's a lot of variety because, like I said, your characters have different abilities. So you've got like your really strong, muscly tank kind of robot who can, do stronger base kinds of things, holds weapons like rocket launchers and things like that. And you've got your very nimble, long-range snipery kind of robots and things like that. But it's actually a very addictive but also a very fun game as well. There's a bit of a storyline to it. So SteamWorld Heist, that's my recommendation there.
Oh, I'm going to look it up. Sounds really fun.
Yeah, sorry, I might have just wasted your time now. Whoops.
Yeah, I'll have 2 games that I'm addicted to. I'll never get anything done.
That's the downside to this segment, is choosing addictive apps. Yeah.
Yes.
So, for our listeners today, first of all, thank you for listening. We really appreciate it. We're 5 episodes in, so we're still a young podcast, but we're hoping that that we're reaching out to people and forming a few connections, and we would love to hear from you. So the way that you can do that is you can send us feedback by going to sqpn.com/Oz and writing comments there. Catholics of Oz is also on the SQPN Facebook page, so you can go and write some comments there and leave us a bit of feedback there. You can also send us an email to catholicsofOz@sqpn.com. And also, any relevant links from things that we've talked about today will be in our show notes. Don't forget, again, to subscribe on iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, TuneIn, and other good podcast apps. Your subscription and your comments and your feedback helps us to be noticed by more, and it does help us to reach more people and grow the community. Don't forget also, there are some awesome SQPN shows that you can listen to apart from ours. So don't forget shows like Let's Talk, All the Secrets of series, Jimmy's Aching Mysterious Worlds, and more. They're all wonderful shows, and there's a lot of interesting content there. Caroline, thank you so much for being on the show today.
Thank you, Lindsay.
And once again, I'm Lindsay San, and thank you for listening to The Catholics of Oz.